The Sanya on the top of Tezaino with Beis, Ben Teisha Shonim Shevish Te Soros. So now we're talking about the sheet of the Tanakama before Rabbi Yossi. And he's 9 years old, he's royal Abir, but at that point, he's not old enough for the possibility of identifying those two saras in his pubic area as real saras. It's only Shuma. Now he gets to the next stage in life. So in that period of time, from 9 to 12, the Odom Bo and those original saras are still on his body, and he's already 11 years old. I should say 12 years old, sorry. So in other words, these hairs did not fall off his body before his 12th birthday. Nevertheless, the Tanakhama says there's still Shuma. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda says, no, Simon. If these hairs that were grown in his pubic area when he was much younger still exist on his body, he has already reached the age of 12, but he still has those very same saras, they never fell off, then it's not Shuma. Those are real Simon. If, on the other hand, those hairs that he grew during the age of 9, 10, 11, etc., until he was 12, if those hairs fell off his body, then even Rabbi Yossi agrees that that's Shuma, that's not Simon. Now, Ben Shloshes Shon of Yom Echad, he has 2 saras, and he's already 13, he's already bar mitzvah, is L'Dirya Kol Simon. Everybody agrees that that's a Simon. So to summarize, the machlokes here between the Tanakhama and Rabbi Yossi revolves around hairs that he grew somewhere between 9 and 12, and they remained on his body. Is that called Shuma, or is that real saras? And I guess the machlokes probably revolves around the question of Shuma, whether Shuma is a Chal Shem, and once it has a Shem, Shuma can never become Simone Gadlus, or do we say no? Truth is, these saras might be saras that establish Gadlus, but we don't know. And we'll find out if these saros persist on his body even after the age of 12. Mosiv Rav Sheshes. Again, let's review. Reish Lakish holds in an Omivriya, goes out for Bisa Sa'av. Rav Sheshes asks from a Brayso, Rav Shimon Omer, Arba manikim lehem shlosha b'ish v'shlosha b'isha. Even though in total there are 4 categories of Hanukah, which means that when the Avdus terminates, the Adon is obligated to give Hanukah, give a gift. We're going to have all sorts of details about what that gift is. And in the case of a male, it's 3 categories of Avdus, which means an Eved HaYotze B'Sof Sheish, an Eved HaYotze B'Yovel, and an Eved Nirtza, who's Yotze B'Visas HaAdon. And in all these cases, there has to be a Hanukah. In a woman, you have to scratch out one of them and add another one. So we're going to scratch out Nirtza. There's no Nirtza by an Omivriya. But however, there is something by Omivriya that doesn't exist by Eved Ivri, and that's Yotze B'Simon. Why couldn't he just say there are 4 in total? And the answer is, Lefisha ein simone be'ish, vi ein ritzia be'isha. What does it mean there's no simone be'ish? There's no din that simonim are mafkia or motzia out solechers. In the case of Isha, she doesn't have ritzia. Expecting Gemara according to you, Rav Shimon ben Lakish, that you add that an Omivri is Yotze b'Misas Adon, is Nisnei Nami Misas Adon, v'chitem, and you'll tell me Yochinami Deshir, and you'll say that he left it out. No, you can't say he left it out because he mentions the number. For Har Bak, Tony, whenever it's mentioned the number, it means that there's nothing else. And according to Reish Lakish, there is something else, and that's Misas Adon. And now the Gemara is going to pull off the same logic that it pulled off on Daf Tezayin Amanal. V'chi temetana davar sheyesh lo kitzva ketani, davar shein lo kitzva lo ketani. V'simonim ein lo kitzva uketani v'chi tema achinami. Kid Rav Safra, who said that the simonim of a kitzva lamata, that you don't have, it's not shaykh to have simonim before the age of 12. It's shuma. V'ika misasa adon di ein lo kitzva. What does it mean v'katani? Rabbi Shimon's talking about a nirtza, and a nirtza goes out to misas ha'adam. It's almost as if the extra surplus years of avdus and servitude and shibud is a result of the ritzia, meaning the result of the fact that he demanded to stay on as an eved. So that's something that's owed to the adon. You owe the adon your avdus, but now the adon is gone, and therefore there's no avdus. So therefore, this third category in Eved Ivri of Yitzia, Nirtza, Misas Adon should be listed here, and it was left out. So therefore, according to Reish Lakish, we're also going to argue that the din of Misas Ha'av was left out. Misas Adon Nami Lo Ketani. Okay, so this is the defense that we have for Reish Lakish. The Gemara asks the following question: Ella Arba Maininu. What are these for? And we said before that's Eved or Oma at the end of Sheish Shodim, or Eved or Oma that go out B'Yovel, or an Ama, an Oma Vriya that Yotzeis B'Simonim. I'm sorry. So the Brisa actually sort of has an inner rhetoric back and forth, a dialogue. Shonim, Yovel, Yovel Shoritzia, and Ba'om Ivriya Simonim. So these are the four methods of Hanukkah. The four categories for Hanukkah. So once again, let's just summarize. According to Reish Lakish, Misas Ha'av is omitted because Misas Ha'adon is likewise omitted. So Gemara says, Hachinam Mistaber, that's logical. The Ketani Seifa, it says in the Seifa of the Brisa, Yata Yochel Omer Arba B'Yechad Mehem, Lefi She'ein Simon B'Ish, Ve'en Mitzvah B'Isha, V'im Isa. If you're going to tell me that Rav Shimon is counting Misas Ha'adon, and I guess the two Yitzios of Yovel are sort of like combined together. Is Be'isha Mir Mishkachas Larba. So why does he say that there's only three and not four? In the case of Misas Ha'adon, even without Ritzia, she goes free. Shmami, no, we see that Ton of Ashir. Lamed Zeh, Shalomona Rav Shimon Misas Ha'adon. Gemara asks a kasha on Reish Lakish, Mosiv of Amram from the Tanakama. Elu manikim lehem ayotze b'shonim b'yovel u'b'misas Adon v'amavriya yotzes b'simonim im Isa. If Rabbi Reish Lakish is correct that an Amavriya goes out for Misa Avia, is a Nisni Nami Misa Sa'ah. Why doesn't he mention Misa Sa'ah? Right? Because we have a Tana that holds that Yitzias Omevriya b'Misa Sa'av Manikin Lahem, which, by the way, fits very well in Reish Lakish's frame of reference, that she goes free b'Misa Sa'ah. V'chi Tema Tana V'Shir. Again, you're going to tell me, to answer this Kash's objection to Reish Lakish, that Misa Sa'av was omitted because Tana V'Shir. No, you can't say Tana V'Shir because for Eluk Tani. Right? It says these are the ones who get Hanukkah, and Elu means there are no others. And if you'll say Davar Shein Lo Sheyesh Lo Kitzvah Ktani, Davar Shein Lo Kitzvah Lo Ktani, Hasimanim Ein Lo Kitzvah Ktani, V'chi Teim Achinami K'Rav Safra, that Simanim Ein Kitzvah Lamata, where Truma is Ha'ika Misas Ha'adon, and that doesn't have a Zman Katzuv, and nevertheless it's mentioned because the Tana says Misas Ha'adon. So we're back to a kash on Reish Lakish. Why doesn't he say Misa Sa'ah? Tiyuv to Reish Lakish, Tiyuv to Gemara has no answer. The Gemara still persists in asking a kash for Reish Lakish Kal V'chomer. You can't just write off Reish Lakish. He had a very solid Kal V'chomer from Simonim. And the Gemara says Kal V'chomer Prichi, we have a pirch on that Kal V'chomer, Mishum De'ikol Mifrach, Mal Simonim, Shenishtana Guf, Tomer Misas Ha'av Shekain Lo Nishtana Guf. You can't derive Misas Ha'av as a Yitzia from Simonim because in Simonim she had to change the Guf. She's no longer the same Guf that was sold as an Omivriya, and therefore it didn't change and she's Yotzes. But in the case of Misas Ha'av, her body didn't change at all. The Gemara wants to bring a raya now from a brisa to Reish Lakish. Tan Achada we have in one brisa. Enek, which is Hanukkah, is Eved Ivri Li'atzma. Number one, if an Eved Ivri is Poda himself, he gets Hanukkah. Gemara is going to argue that that's Pshita. Enek Shalom Ivriya Li'atzma. Just like an Eved Ivri collects the Hanukkah for himself, pockets it, put it in his bank account, so too in the case of Amivriya. Tanya Ida, we have another brisa that contradicts that brisa. And it says, Enek Amma Avriya Umitziyas Lavia. Meaning the Av will pick up the Hanukkah and put it in his bank account, not in her bank account. And if she finds a Mitziyah, that's Hefker. And she found it while she was still in the Rishus of the Adon, is Lavia. V'ein l'rabel l'skar batol bilvad. Which means if she was mevatel from Malacha at the time that she was being osek b'mitzia, then the Adon gets tashlum on what he lost from her bitul Malacha. Now, again, we have a stira here, an open contradiction between these two brises. Because the first brice indicates that Hanukkah belongs to her and she pockets. The second one, Hanukkah belongs to the father. My love, how do we reconcile this apparent contradiction between two brises? And the answer is, the second brice is talking about a case where she goes out with Simoni Narus, her father is still alive, and therefore he collects the Hanukkah under the principle of Binureh Beis Havir. But her Denafka Misa'av, the first brisa, is talking about a case where her father died. And if it's her father died, then who's going to collect the Hanukkah? Obviously, she'll get the Hanukkah. Gemara says, Lo. Idi ve'idi Denafka Lo b'Simonim. Whether it's the first brisa or the second brisa, we're talking about a case where she's Yotze b'Simon of Lo Kasha. We have a stira, and how do we reconcile? In the second brisa, we're talking about a case where her father's still alive, and therefore he picks up the Hanukkah. In the first brisa, we're talking about a case where the father's already gone. And therefore, you cannot hold that this brisa will prove that there's a Tana who accepted Reish Lakish. We have no Tana that accepted Reish Lakish. The Gemara says, Bishlema, I understand why the Tana has to teach me that Enek Omev really Atzma, because she has a father. And not only that, it's Lemute Achen. We also want to exclude the brothers. They can't collect Hanukkah. The Sanya, we learned this from a pasuk in a brayso. So we're talking about Eved Knani in this case, but it seems to be that Manchilim Osam, the Eved Knani Libneihem, V'lo B'nosam Libnei, V'lo B'nosam Libneihem. Mikan she'eno the Morish Schus Bito, that a father who has a schus in the Maisi Yadayim of his bas could not be Morish in event that the father dies. Those Maisi Yadayim libno. Ela Eved Ivri liatzmo pshita. Why did the Brisa have to tell me that if an Eved Ivri was paid himself, he pockets the money of the Hanukkah? Elaman, who's he going to give it to? On Rav Yosef, this is like an idiomatic phrase in the Talmud, Yud Keres Kochazina Hachid. Right? The Yud is the smallest letter, and Keres means Kirya. Kirya means a large metropolis. So what you did is you took a small dot on a map called an Os Yud, and you made it into a Keres, which is an Ir Gedolah. So really the Tana has to teach us the din of Amma. And there was no reason why the Tana had to continue and teach the din of an Eved. It's partial. But once you start with something small, you want to expand it to something large. Abaye Omar, there is a Chiddush here. Hachi Omar of Sheshes Hamani Tutoi. One of the Tanoim is Tutoi. The Sanya we learned in the Brisa, Tutoi Omer Lo V'lo L'Malchov. That the Hanukkah is given only to him, meaning to the Eved himself, but not to a Balchov. If the Eved took out a loan and he has outstanding Chovos, those Bali Chovos could not collect Hanukkah. Hanukkah is a very intimate kind of thing. Gufa, we mentioned in the earlier Brisa, Elu Shemanikim Lahem. Excuse me. Hayotze Sheishon Yotze V'Yovel Ube Misas Ha'adon. If the Adon of the Eved dies, the Eved goes free. And just 1 second. Unfortunately, it got erased here. So I don't know. I think he's saying that the Yorshim have to give the Hanukkah like any Balchov. I hope I'm not misleading you. The Amma Vriya B'Simonim, she goes out B'Simonim, she receives Hanukkah. Avol Boreach, if the Eved runs away from his Adon, or Vayotze Bigor and Kesef. In these two cases, the Yitzia Me'avdus was initiated by the Eved himself. His Ein Manikalo, he doesn't get Hanukkah. Hanukkah only applies, according to this Tanakama, we'll soon see Rabbi Meir, when the Yitzia was initiated by the Adon. I agree with you that if he runs away, he doesn't deserve Hanukkah. We'll soon see that applies even after the Yovel. He doesn't get Hanukkah. The Yotze B'Giron Kesef. However, in the case of Giron Kesef, Rabbi Meir disagrees with the Chachamim. Anikim lo. The Adon did not take the initiative. It was the Eved himself. We'll see how Rabbi Meir deals with that question. Rav Shimon Omer Abba Manikim. There are 4 categories of avodim that receive Hanukkah. Shlosha, we already mentioned, and they apply to an ish. That's Eved Yotze B'Sheish. Then we have a Yotze B'Yovel. And then we have Nirtza. So the word arba here means when we take the sachakol of all the methods or all the scenarios that generate Hanukkah, shlosha v'isha, so the 3 in a man and 3 in a woman. In a woman, it's Yotze B'Sheish, Yotze B'Yovel, and Yotze B'Simonim. In the man, we have a 3rd case of the Eved Nirtza, that's Yotze B'Yovel. Why? Because the fish ain't Yitzia B'Simonim B'ish, and ain't Ritzia B'Isha. Minani Mili. How do we derive these dinim? The Tanur Rabbanan we learned in a brayso. Yachol, I might think that lo yu manikim el yotze b'sheish. Only in the case of sheish is explicit in the pasuk that he gets Hanukkah in Dvar Perek Tezvav. Minai leRabos yotze b'yovel misas ha'adon v'yom ivriya b'simonim. How do we know this Hanukkah in the other cases besides Yotze B'Sheish? We have Yotze B'Yovel, we have Misas Ha'adon, we have the Simonim of an Avivriya. Talmud Loma Tishalchenu V'chisa Shalchenu. The pasuk reads as follows: V'avadcha sheish shonim v'shana shvius Tishalchenu chafshi me'imach v'chisa Shalchenu me'imach. So the Torah repeats the word Shalchenu for a reboot, to teach me that there's Hanukkah for an Eved, even in all the other methods and all the other scenarios that we mentioned. Maybe I should even go as far as to say if the Eved fled like a fugitive, he still deserves Hanukkah. Or Vayotze B'Giron Kesef, according to that Shita, in a case with his Yitzia because he paid up the balance of what he owed in Avdus. Talmud Lomer V'chisa Shalchenu Chavshi Me'imach. And the word me'imach is superfluous. Misha shilucho me'imach. Yotza boreach vayotza b'giron kes she'en shilumi. So as we said before, me'imach means that the initiative for Yitzia was taken by the Adon to the exclusion of 2 cases. Number 1, boreach, and number 2, giron kesef. They don't deserve Hanukkah. Rabbi Meir Omer Bos, I agree with you that boreach ain't no nikasov. I'm only going to disagree with Giron Kesef. So now we're saying Yotze B'Giron Kesef is also Me'imach, according to Rabbi Meir. Why? Because the Adon is accepting money for those years that the Eved should have to work. And therefore he's participating in the Giron Kesef. So he took the initiative. The Gemara now establishes a Borech Hashlama boy. When we get a hold of this fugitive Eved, we're going to be mechayev him to fill in all the time that he missed in his Avdus Tozi Adon. Now the Gemara wants to know, but after he fills that in, after his Hashlama, then he goes free, and there's no reason why he shouldn't get Hanukkah. What's the source in the Torah that after we get hold of this Borech, he has to fill in all those days and weeks and months that he was out there in Kalamazoo? It means that he has to give 6 years of Avdus. We'll see later on what happens to Visa Chole. And now we're up to Daf Yud Zayin.